So long story short, they gave me my vacation pay, which was a nice chunk, and my bucket list was to always play Pebble Beach up in San
Yeah.
Francisco. So I go up there, and a good friend of mine who works at Empire, she used to program the San Francisco station. She calls me and she's like, "Hey, you should come by, say hi to Ghazi and stuff. He'd like to meet you, just to say hi, no big deal." So I go in there, and Ghazi and Empire offer me a substantial amount of money to help them with a couple of their acts for a couple of months as a consultant, which is a new field to me. I've never been a consultant before, and I plan on leaving all this. And the money that they offered me, and I went home and I told the wife, I'm like, listen, even if I sell cars or real estate, like this kind of money can't be made in this short amount of time with me not being away from you guys for 60 to 80 hours a week. Like, this is insane for me to turn this down.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try this way and pick and choose the projects I work and who I work with so that I can keep myself more sane and do it my way as opposed to a big machine way. So I did that. And then a couple months later, a buddy of mine introduced me to a guy named Dooney. Dooney is, I don't know if you guys know who Dooney is, but Dooney ended up being a guy that had a company called The Lights Global, who their biggest act originally was Terrio, the fat kid that was doing dances on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
Got their money off that, and they became social influencer guys, and then they blew up this little guy named Lil Pump, who nobody under 19 had any clue who this kid was, and including myself. But if you put it on Twitter or Instagram, and these guys had figured out the algorithms at the time, you were like inundated the way BTS inundates the people now with batshit crazy kids all over the shit commenting on Lil Pump. And I'm like, who the fuck is this kid, right? So these guys are like, yeah, we wanna try and take this kid to radio. We've already got the SoundCloud success. And this is the beginning of SoundCloud really taking the lane of radio, because up until now, you couldn't be a star in 2017 unless radio played your record. Yeah. Spotify still wasn't as huge as it is. Apple wasn't as huge as it is. SoundCloud was nothing. It was brand new. But what was happening was there was an entire world developing under 18 years old of these kids that were having their own outlets and weren't even touching radio or TV. Didn't even know the core acts that the rest of the world knew, but they had their own stars. The Pop Smokes, the Triple X's, Extentacion, Tekashi, all these kids found stardom in the 19-year-old world before anybody in our age even knew about it. And the difference is, in our time, our parents knew about the shitty acts they didn't like. They just wouldn't let us listen to it because there was only so many places we could hear music, either on their radio, their TV, or their computer. Now what had happened is there was a divergence of listeners, and these listeners no longer needed their parents' car to listen to music. They're in the back seat streaming their own music on SoundCloud while their parents are listening to Rush Limbaugh, whatever the fuck they listen to. So this all happened in 2007 was the year that everybody realized, oh shit, there's no more gatekeepers. This shit is rampant out there. Like everybody. And so I got on a bus with this kid, Lil Pump. It's me and a bunch of fucking 18 and 19 year olds, right? For 2 weeks. Thankfully, I wasn't on Pump's bus. I was on the backup bus, the auxiliary bus where the crew was on. And it was insane to watch a kid have so many screaming fans. And he was, antisocial. He's not a social kid. He's a 17-year-old that's scared of the world, that's raised online. And in real life, he doesn't know how to talk to people. It's really crazy. So, but that was my introduction to where the music was going. And I had a hard time explaining to radio and to labels that, look, what you guys are doing is becoming the past. These kids are going to break without you. And you need to learn how to amplify what they're doing a different way. And it's not just airplay, it's appearances, it's pictures, it's content. And at this time, radio stations, iHeart was ahead of everybody else with setting up their own online content and stuff like that. The other stations had no clue what to even do with it. I had to teach radio stations like, hey, send your night guy down here with a camera. He's going to record it. Then he's going to post it. Then he's going to tag this guy, hashtag, tag, all that stuff. And then you can put it on these socials and then promote it on your station. And I literally helped a bunch of radio stations develop their own social platforms because they didn't even have the concept of that. Just imagine these guys have millions of people listening to them, and you go to their Instagrams and their Facebooks, they have 1,000, 2,000 followers. Like, how do you not have in the hundreds of thousands in a city like Los Angeles on your Instagram, or a city like Cleveland or whatever? So that was the beginning of that. And so with the success I found with Gucci Gang, which was the beginning of my realization that music has changed, and I call it punk rap. It's like punk rap, because when you go to these shows, I grew up watching punk rock because I grew up surfing and everything, and there was people mosh pitting and all that shit. Then I went to this show, and here's this kid rapping, and it looks exactly like a punk rock show. They're jumping off the rafters, they're mosh pitting, they're overdosing on pills, which is a punk rock show. Yeah. It's all punk rock. And the audience is all 13-year-old white kids. And then you realize that These kids are here because they don't have to pay anything more than attention, because they don't have to invest $17.99 in a CD to buy it. They just have to click. Oh, they don't like it, next, click. Oh, they don't like it, click, next. It's all they can afford to pay is attention, and their parents are bringing them down, dropping them off by the vanfuls. And by the end of the tour, we had parent lounges on this shit where the parents would be sipping Chardonnay because the venues figured out how to make some alcohol money, because all these kids were so young, the venues were losing out because there's no bar sales.
Yeah.
You walk up to the bar and get a drink in no time at every one of these shows. So it was the event of a new era, like, and then 10K Records came along, and they're like, hey, can you help us with what you did over there? So we got this kid named Tekashi 6ix9ine and this other kid named Trippie Redd.
Yeah.
We have to develop a new style of working with these kids, because these kids don't work well with radio. They're not polished. They're not groomed. They're not going to get on a mic and say, hey, everybody, go listen to my new album. They're going to get on the mic and say, yo, suck my dick, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. And they do that. And it works. In today's world, it works. Yeah. The highest viewed video on Breakfast Club till today, I think, is still both times Tekashi 6ix9ine.
I mean, he's a character, right? He's a character.
He's a character. And you know, and to that point, like, you know, it's what our audiences have become. They like outrage. They like drama. It's got to be an episode. But also, I think it's dangerous, because we're asking people to become vested in these artists' lives. These artists had a hard time keeping up with the public when they didn't have to reply to Instagram and Twitter and always have cameras on them. It's going to lead to some really bad outcomes in the next 5 to 10 years when these people have zero privacy at all. I mean, you got Justin Bieber talking about people camping outside his house like it's a tourist museum. And, you know, and now these artists, you asking people to be so vested in you. What makes that hard is, like, for instance, the R. Kelly situation, the Bill Cosby situation, right? In the past, people could separate the art from the artist.
Yeah.
But in the last 20 years, we've asked people to go headfirst into the artist. Like, you got to believe in everything the artist believes in, otherwise you can't support him. Like, Kanye talked out against Biden, fuck him. We're all off Kanye now.
Yeah.
Despite all of his music and everything else, right? That's how they move. That's going to create a lot of extremism with these guys, and it's going to create almost to the level of I'm afraid of how much interaction artists are going to have to do. I think the only way the system is going to work is if you have groups like BTS, they're interchangeable, so that once one guy gets burnt out, you can plug another one in and keep it moving, because I don't know how long this is sustainable.